It's been said time and again by pundits and enthusiasts alike that if AMD wants to gain mindshare with the community, Radeon needs to have a halo product. They need a graphics card that competes with NVidia's best, even if it just serves as a poster child to build confidence in the rest of the lineup. Well, here it is. AMD's top card for this generation, the RX 6900 XT, based on AMD's RDNA 2 architecture. So is this the fastest gaming card on the planet? Has AMD conquered the top spot in the high-end GPU market? You'll find out after this message from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by UCDkeys.com. UCD Keys are partnering with Cortex to bring you Windows 10 keys that work globally for just over $16, and you can get them discounted further by 20% by using the discount code C20. You can also get Office keys, which also work globally. I've been using these keys myself, and they work without any issues and get delivered to you quickly. Check out the links in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code C20 for 20% off of your purchase at ucdkeys.com. If you saw my review of the 6800 and 6800 XT, you'll already have seen the 6900 XT's externals. It's exactly the same as the 6800 XT. The same shroud, the same dimensions, the same two 8-pin power connectors, the same I/O with two display ports, one USB Type-C for display and power, and one HDMI 2.1. On the inside, you do get 16 power stages on the reference design, as opposed to the 15 on the 6800 XT, which should help with power delivery and hopefully offer higher overclocks. We'll look at that in a minute. Compared to the 6800 XT, the 6900 XT, which has an MSRP of $999, comes with a couple of goodies in the box. A very cool mouse mat in the Radeon branding style, and a custom keycap with the R from Radeon and Ryzen. Like most keycaps you'll find in commercial keyboards these days, it's made of cheap, thin ABS that looks to be dye sublimated, so it's not exactly a premium keycap, but it's nice to see some goodies included in what is effectively a premium product. The keycap even has transparent lettering if RGB is your thing, and is MX mount compatible. Nice. Like I said earlier, everything else about the physical characteristics of the card are the same as on the 6800 XT, so check my 6800 and 6800 XT review video for more details on that. The 6900 XT is available today. That is, if you are lucky enough to grab one of the few that will actually be available at retailers, if the recent GPU launches are any indication. Before we look at benchmark numbers, I ran some Fairmark stress tests, and these are the temperatures, power draw, and fan speeds of each configuration. Note that even the manual overclock, which pushed the fans to 2000 RPM, kept the GPU relatively quiet. The reference cooler is fantastic at keeping both temperatures and noise under control, so no complaints there. Let's move on to benchmarks then, and we're off to a good start with Firestrike Ultra, with the 6900 XT getting 13,000 points stock and just over 14,000 points when overclocked, which is seriously impressive and leaves NVIDIA's $1,500 3090 in the dust. But does that translate into actual gaming? Assassin's Creed Valhalla was made by a group of people that have never seen a keyboard or a mouse in their lives, judging by how clunky the controls are in this game, but nevertheless, it's a fun game that I've been enjoying on my breaks from video editing, and the 6900 XT absolutely crushes here, hammering down 73 frames per second on average at 4K with every setting maxed out, so a whole 28% faster than the much more expensive RTX 3090. The 1% lows on the 6900 XT match the average FPS on the 3090, so that gives you an indication of how fast the AMD flagship is in this AMD-sponsored game. I showed in my 6800's review how easy it is to overclock these GPUs, and overclocked, the 6900 XT gets a fairly tame 7% performance increase increase, jumping to 78 FPS average. So overclocked, in this best case scenario, the 6900 XT is 18% faster than the 6800 XT. At 1440p, the 6900 XT distances itself even further, getting 119 FPS on average compared to 84 on the 3090. So it's 41% faster than NVIDIA's top card stock versus stock. This is, like I said, a best case scenario. Moving on to probably a worst case scenario in the NVIDIA sponsored title Watch Dogs Legion, and at 4K we see the 6900 XT matching NVIDIA's cheaper RTX 3080 and falling a bit short of the 3090, 5 frames short on average. If we overclock the 6900 XT, we get within spitting distance of the 3090. At 1440p, things get a lot better for the 6900 XT, which now matches the 3090 pretty much, and overclocked distances itself from the rest, getting 90 FPS on average and over 60 FPS 1% lows. Personally, I wouldn't spend $1,000 on a GPU to play at 1440p, but I guess you might want to upscale to 4K, and at 1440p, the 6900 XT performs pretty well. In Godfall at 4K, the 6900 XT delivers stellar performance, getting 84 FPS on average, so pretty much on par with the 3090, and about 15% faster than the 6800 XT and the 3080. At 1440p, we see an enormous lead again at 160 FPS on average, so a full 34% faster than the more expensive 3090, and 12% faster than its sibling, the 6800 XT. Next up is Dirt 5, another recent game, and with ray tracing turned off, the 6900 XT only manages to beat the 6800 XT by 5 frames on average, which is disappointing considering you're paying $350 more for the flagship. At 1440p, there's again a very slight difference between the two. Before we move on to ray tracing, here are a couple more games with the 6900 XT versus NVIDIA's 3090. In Borderlands 3, the two flagship products are pretty much tied at 4K at 72 FPS average using TX12, while at 1440p, the 6900 XT again performs significantly ahead despite being a whole $500 cheaper, and in Death Stranding, the two GPUs are again evenly matched at 4K with the 6900 XT a few frames ahead, but again at 1440p the AMD card pulls ahead. So far things are looking good for AMD, but can the 6900X compete with NVIDIA's best card when it comes to real-time ray tracing? Well, in Dirt 5, a game optimized for AMD hardware, yes, the 6900 XT gets the same average frame rate but with higher 1% lows. In Watch Dogs Legion, however, while the 3090 manages a cinematic 32 FPS average, the 6900 XT delivers a slideshow at 21 FPS average. This is at 4K with ray tracing set to Ultra, mind you, and of course the NVIDIA GPU offers the option to turn on DLSS here, which would give you playable frame rates on the 3090, something that AMD can't offer at the moment. In fact, I can't get a decent experience in this game even with the lowest ray tracing setting, even at 1440p with the 6900 XT, not to mention the fact that the game crashes regularly when you use ray tracing with AMD's GPUs. It's not a deal breaker, but it should be noted that this is the one game where I actually think ray tracing makes the visuals look significantly better, and AMD's best GPU can't cope. This is an NVIDIA sponsored title though, so I wouldn't use this as reference for ray tracing performance, just like I wouldn't use Dirt 5, which is an AMD sponsored one. Having said that, at the time of making this video, Godfall has ray tracing enabled only for the Radeon GPUs. Now how about that? And even though the differences in visual quality are very subtle and not worth turning on in my opinion, the 6900 XT delivers a decent experience even at 4K max settings, and a very smooth experience at 1440p with ray tracing enabled. Perhaps this is a sign of things to come when more titles make their way from the AMD-powered consoles over to the PC. And lastly, for ray tracing, looking at 3D Mark's Port Royal. Even when overclocked, the 6900 XT can't match the NVIDIA 3080, let alone the 3090. Now looking at an aggregate of 1440p performance between a selection of mostly recent games, the 6900 XT is the uncontested leader, and the same is true for 4K, perhaps surprisingly judging by how much the 3090 costs, at least in the set of games I tested. It should be noted that a lot of the recent titles included here, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Godfall, and Dirt 5, perform exceptionally well on the 6900 XT, so I wouldn't be surprised if a larger set of games that included more NVIDIA-sponsored titles or more older games would put the 3090 on top of the stack, but there's a limited amount of time to test, and obviously I can't include every game ever made. Also, this doesn't account for the excellent features that you get with the NVIDIA GPUs that are not available on AMD GPUs, at least for now, like DLSS, RTX Voice, Machinima, and so on. So if those features are valuable to you, I would probably consider the RTX 3080 when you can find one at the suggested price. If all you care about is gaming though, and those features don't mean much to you, then the 6900 XT is the fastest GPU that you can get right now, and the perfect GPU to combine with a 4K 120Hz OLED via HDMI 2.1. Is it worth it over the RTX 3090? Absolutely. The $500 you are saving can be put towards a better CPU or better RAM or a better display. But then again, if you were already considering a 3090, then the extra $500 probably don't matter much. The real question is if the 6900 XT is worth the extra $350 over the 6800 XT, and in my opinion, no. There's nothing here extra that justifies such a large price difference. Perhaps if the shroud was more premium and the drivers had pro features, and of course if the performance gap to the 6800 XT was larger. So looking strictly at performance per dollar, the 6900 XT doesn't make much sense when you can get a 6800 XT for much less and get a very similar experience. Having said that, I have no doubt that AMD will sell 6900 XTs by the bucket load. In fact, I think this will probably be AMD's best-selling GPU of all time. From what I have heard, the AIP models will cost around $1,150, and even if they cost $1,200, I think AMD and their partners will sell you as many as they can make. Why? Firstly, AMD is back at the top of the performance charts. When was the last time that happened? AMD fans who only buy AMD will want the very best that AMD has ever produced, and I have no doubt that the demand is there. Secondly, the fact that the 3090 is only a hair faster than the 3080 hasn't stopped NVIDIA from selling a ton of 3090s at a ridiculous $1,500, so I don't think the fact that the 6900 XT is about 10 to 15% faster than the 6800 XT, depending on the game, at 4K, will stop people from spending 53% more money to get the best of the best. In that sense, the 6900 XT reminds me of the original Titan, which served a similar purpose for NVIDIA. It's the Halo product that helps sell the rest of the lineup, and of course, there are a lot of people out there who will just buy the best. And this time around, AMD has the best. I think we should all be celebrating the fact that we now have true competition at the very high end. It's remarkable what AMD has achieved with Radeon A2, but there's a lot to be said about these insane prices. $1,000 is a lot of money for a GPU. My advice from the 6800's review stands. For now, spend your money on a nice 120Hz OLED TV and upscale from 1080p on your current system. Come February or March, it might make sense to look at the GPU market again when prices and availability have returned to normality. If you are really keen on getting a GPU right now, AMD has the best gaming GPU on the market. Big Navi is indeed worthy of its nickname after all. I will be posting an article soon on Cortex.tech with a more detailed analysis of the cost of GPUs over time, so be sure to follow me on Twitter @Cortex so you don't miss that. A huge thanks to my patrons who help support this channel. You can join them at patreon.com/Cortex, and by becoming a patron you get exclusive access to the Cortex Discord server where you can talk to me directly to discuss things like keycaps. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.